It's now time for A Closer Look with Lennox Gasper, a program which takes an in-depth look at the government's works in and around communities in Region 10 and how these works are impacting the lives of residents.
Hello there, and welcome to another program of A Closer Look. We are here with Honorable Dr. Vindhya Persaud, who will share with us the extended ministry's works and program as she go about her daily activities. Minister, thank you very much for being on this program, and maybe you would want to share with those that are listening some updates as it relates to the pension book and the one-off cash grant that is presently being rolled out.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And we had a previous discussion, and I was bringing you up to date as we moved across the regions with the progress as it related to the booklet and the one-off voucher. And this week has been a busy one, like every other week. And this week we were able to roll out the distribution exercise in both regions 2 and 10. Last week it was regions 5 and 6. And next week it will be region 3.
What was the rationale behind the entire program? I just want to get a kind of sneak peek into your mind.
So there are two components to the distribution exercise, the first being the 2022 booklet. And when I got there at the ministry, I was very quick to recognize that there was some degree of frustration in terms of pensioners getting their book for a subsequent year. They seem to have a lot of runaround, and the year would have started and many people would have not yet gotten their booklets. And when that happens, it usually delays the time that they have to access the monthly cash. And so it causes a lot of inconvenience. So that's something I wanted to fix very early, and we would have been moving in that direction. And so at the end of the month of October, I can safely say that 95% of pensioners would have had their 2022 booklets in their hands. And because we were at the same time, through the government of Guyana relief measures, going to embark on the program to distribute the one-off vouchers worth $25,000, it was the opportune thing to do to tie both of these together. And so as people collected their one-off voucher, once they were pensioner, they were able to get their 2022 booklet. And there were so many pluses to this. Several, I'll share some with you. One, the transportation to go to a venue, one cost to and fro. And a lot of the venues were very close to either a post office or a payment site that was considered an alternate venue. So if they wanted to cash their October month regular pension voucher, and they also wanted to cash their November voucher, they could have done that as well. And at the same time, they were getting their book. So it just brought everything together, removed the stress, removed the frustration, and made the process seamless. I mean, I know in the earlies of every region, there were a few hiccups. And that's because so many people turned up on the first day. I know people were anxious to get their voucher and their book, and I understand it. And I was on the sites, several of them. I sat with the officers and I worked equal and straight with them where there were large numbers of persons to make sure that people got their books and they were able to leave, in a better mood than when they had to wait.
In addition to the two regions that you recently visited, 2 and 10, what are the other regions that were already completed, and what are the regions that are yet to be completed?
Region 3 is next week, and we are going to be distributing to about 8,400 plus pensioners. And prior to that, we would have completed by the end of the week all of the other regions. So it's only Region 3 remaining. Region 4, in the final week of October, there were some persons who would have missed the opportunity to uplift their book and their voucher. So in Region 4, being the heaviest in terms of numbers, over 27,000 pensioners just in Region 4, we are doing the final week as giving them an opportunity to go to their regular offices and also in Georgetown, the Cornhill office, to get their pension booklet and voucher. So if people check the newspapers or they check our Facebook, they will see there are different days designated to different catchment areas for Region 4. So at the end of October, I can safely say about 98% of people would have had their voucher and their book. Those who didn't in the first month exercise, and that would be at the end of October, November onwards, the booklet is available from November until next year, but the voucher should be collected at least in the month of November because it is time sensitive. So people have to have their voucher in their hand so that they can encash their voucher before the 30th of November.
I know the last time we had the interview, you would have mentioned about the Cop Squad 2000. And I took time to notice the graduation. And so I just want maybe for you to remind us, even though you did mention it prior, what would this do for the men and women in uniform that would have been graduated?
I think the public would have heard from the men and women in uniform when they did graduate, and I took careful note of what was said. Many of them said that the experience was a good one, but more than that, the information would be very useful to them as it is pertinent to how they engage with members of the public, specific to cases of abuse and violence. And for me, that is something that needs to be fixed. And so, very early on, head on, I thought it would be important for those persons in the law enforcement agency to be equipped with the right tools to not only engage, but to engage professionally and with some degree of alacrity. Because if you listen to the public, when people go to make reports, there can be considered many instances where those reports are not taken. They're not taken in a timely manner. They're not taken the way they ought to be taken. And the manner in which people are treated leaves much to be desired. So that was a big chunk of what they gained in the training so that they are now in a better position to deal with those persons coming to them. And all of them, without exception, said, well, now they understand what it is that they should be doing. I know people will say training has always happened, but this training was targeted. In addition to that, not only about how you engage, how you take the report, what you write, because that's an important aspect of what will happen with the case as maybe it goes towards the courts. And then following on to that, the law. What does the law say? What are the rights of the person coming? What does a law enforcement officer has within the ambit of the law to guide him or her along a certain path? That was also the kind of information that they benefited from. And coming out with that degree of information, I was very, very happy because they were very enthusiastic now to go back out to the police stations and to apply it. And I really charged them. I said, you know, it's not only you applying it, but you also sharing the knowledge while we get to the point of training all 2,000 that we committed to. Yes. So by the end of that last graduation, we would have trained 21 in the first batch, and this batch would have been just taking us to a total of 75. And so it might seem like a small number, but we have to ensure people are properly trained and they go through the course with a level of seriousness that we want them to. And then there's a step that we're moving towards, which is putting those officers out for public scrutiny because their names and faces will be on the walls of the police station. I'm still working on that with the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Commissioner of Police so we can have that movement, because when people would have passed through this, aside from the badge that identifies this, you want to know who that officer is. So if there's anything that they do not in line with the training they would have received, they have to answer. So they're held accountable.
The good thing about it is that the ministry has started, and if we apply the each one reach one method,
correct,
then that 75 can multiply to 300 in no time. So that is encouraging. What words of encouragement would you give to parents, men and women, and even children who are in abusive relationships?
So before I answer your question, I also want to say that in addition to the officers being trained, we trained trainers. So as we speak, a schedule is being made up where the trainers within the Ministry of Human Services and the police force will be going out and synonymously training officers across the regions. So you will see multiplication of the effort that we would have started. And while that training that we are doing focuses on officers, I want to let the public know it's all level of officers, all levels of officers. And that's key because I was in discussion with the Commissioner of Police and he said, you know, recruits have training. But I said more than the recruits having training and then after that training, what next? This must be institutionalized in the police force. So at the end of a certain time, everyone should be trained. So we should have better engagement. And to the question that you asked, what am I telling people? I want you to report. Don't dismiss cases of abuse and violence because that might be the one window of opportunity that someone has between life and death. And you are seeing so many reports where people know of cases of abuse and violence. It has been a long practice. It has been something that's entrenched and people accept it as norm. We should not get complacent and accept things as norm. I have found people coming to the ministry now and saying, well, I've gone to the police station and this is what happened. We take action. And then there's another avenue, 914. So whether directly they come to the ministry or they call 914, we get the reports. If there is an obstruction in the referral pathway or at the point of report, we will take it further. And we have been doing it because people need to understand that not only the law is there on paper, but the law protects them and they have this support network when it comes to not only the Ministry of Human Services, but the other agencies that work collaboratively to tackle the issue of violence. So if you have a child out there and you're looking at today, make that report. Call 914. If it's hard to go to the station, call 914 because if you don't want to go alone, we will connect you to a survivor's advocate who will go with you to that police station. And if there's a bottleneck in the system, we want to know about it so that we can deal with it. I'm not going to sit here and say the system is perfect. It's not. But we are making every effort to tackle the system from all ends and levels to improve it bit by bit.
Can you say, I'm not sure if you have a date in mind, but when will the next training for the Cop Squad 2000?
Next week.
Mine. Very
Next week. And as I told you, because they have so many more trainers now, it will fan out across the country.
All right. The month of October is observed as the month of the elderly. What are sort of programs does the ministry have in place for the elderly within our society?
So this year, the focus was on digital education and the elderly people using digital connectivity. And of course, that is because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the distance that we're all supposed to be keeping from each other. And the elderly would have been impacted perhaps heavier than most other persons because many of them have health challenges. Some of them live alone. So they have been bearing the brunt of what COVID-19 would have brought to the world. So there were several programs, and those included educating members of the elderly community in how they can not only use digital connectivity, but how, if they never used it, how they can learn. And I remember at one of the activities, there was a prayer service at the Palms as one of the activities for the month of the elderly. And I suggested that maybe we need to get more tablets into the Palms and get the elderly people into this whole technology momentum that the world is seeing right now, that surge towards using technology, because when they can vicariously travel or they can connect with loved ones, it's a wonderful thing to see. So in addition to the church service, there were a series of activities that were held at the Palms, which involved grooming the elderly, taking elderly persons on tour, and basically celebrating their accomplishments. And I had the opportunity to meet with the eldest residents at the Palms, Miss Zuri, who was 106 years old. And I was told in no uncertain terms that she doesn't want anything else but chocolate. So when I left, I said, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know this before I went there, but when I left, I went to a store and I bought some chocolates and sent them back to her. She said she eats 2 a day. So I said, is that the secret to longevity? I don't know. But she's very healthy. Nothing is medically wrong with her.
Wow.
But we took her lots of stuff. She didn't want any of that. She got some icing on the cake, if you want to put it that way, because Bishop Findlay sang her a song. So Bishop Findlay is very special to her right now.
Wow. That sounded like that was a very beautiful experience.
It really was. It really was, because at 106 years old, you know what you want, you know your mind, and pretty much you are already set in your ways.
Yes.
And she was very plain spoken. She knew exactly what she wanted or didn't want it, and she told us.
I took time to track some of your movements, and so I noted that you were at the launching of a book, Beyond the Break, and this is Stacey Johnson's book. Your thoughts on the book and maybe some of the contents?
Well, I think the book is an important addition to the literary landscape of the country. And Stacey Johnson, in the book, and meeting her and listening to how she got the book to be published, what struck me was her tenaciousness and her perseverance and her grit and determination, because she had several challenges before she could have even published the book. Now she said she wants to make sure that it's in a digital format so that it can be more accessible. And we committed as the ministry to purchasing 100 copies of those books and disseminating it as best as we can across the country. But what came across from the book was how she managed, how she coped with people's perception of her suffering from brittle bone disease, and what she did to surmount her challenges. And one thing she said at the launch, and I think it's good, she said she wanted children who would have had any form of disability, or children who would have had a similar condition like her, to be equipped with the knowledge of how to cope as a child, because that would have been the most difficult part of her journey in life. So I found her book very interesting and very inspiring. And even if someone is not living with a disability, it's good to learn from life experiences of other people and how, in spite of their own challenges, they can definitely transcend that to give us a book that can help us in so many other ways.
I love that. I really do love that. And I would want to take the time out here at this point in the program to encourage persons to support Stacey Johnson and to buy the book Beyond the Break. It's very, very important for us to chronicle our experiences in life. And if we can tell, who can tell our stories better than us? If we can tell our stories, it may help someone else who's in a similar situation. Doctor, I know you came with some other information that you would want to share with us.
Well, I just want to say, back to the pension exercise, if you haven't yet gotten your book and voucher, don't be disheartened. There are several ways this can happen. In some cases, that's why I was very careful to say not everyone got their book as yet, because while most regions by the end of October would give us about 95% coverage for the country, there are those persons who live in remote communities, those people who live in riverine areas, and those pensions and vouchers and books, those will be delivered directly to those communities. So if you haven't yet gotten your book or your voucher, it's coming to you. Just contact your officer, especially if you are from a remote community or a riverine area. And in addition to the pensioner, people who are on the public assistance register, they also benefited from the $25,000 voucher. So the same process will apply to them. We had quite a number of people who opted for the shut-in delivery, and that's in process in the regions that we would have already completed with the regular distribution exercise. Region 3, everything is now going to start on Monday, and Region 4, because it has over 27,000 persons in that region, that might take us a little beyond October, but whether you visit Cornhill Street or you visit the Ministry of Human Services offices within your region, your voucher and your books are there. Don't be disheartened.
Minister, thank you for the update, Honorable Dr. Vindhya Persaud. And this has been A Closer Look. I am Lennox Gasper.